is Apba Baseball Classics, where yesterday's stars performed through cards and dice, classic games on our tabletops. Hi everybody, this is Apba Brian at Apba Baseball Classics with a little different video today. This video is going to celebrate our love of baseball, love of Kansas City baseball, and a particular baseball we have right here, gifted to me by one of my guests here. And we do have two beautiful young guests. That's, you're familiar with Apple Lori up in the corner. And then down below, all the way from Seattle, we have another guest, Sandy Kraus Labowitz. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Actually, it's Leibowitz, but that's okay.
Leibowitz.
My own family, I changed it. My own family doesn't know how to pronounce it.
I change things up. I always went by my middle name instead of my first name, and then I sign my checks by my business name, I guess, John Beanie. So I like to confuse people too. But anyway, Sandy has a history with baseball in Kansas City. But first, you met Lori a long time ago.
Long time ago, when I was just out of college, we were roommates in Pasadena, California, a half a block off the Rose Parade in Pasadena. And it was a wonderful little condo. And it was just a fun time to be roommates. I learned a lot about life, and we became lifelong friends, I think. Mm-hmm. And she's from Kansas City. I had no idea at that time. And Appa Brian is from Kansas City, and they have a lot of history in common. So I'm going to stand here and just smile and hopefully make a few comments.
Well, some of that history is with the Kansas City Athletics, because your dad, who owned a business in Kansas City, also had season tickets. You had pretty good seats, didn't you?
Yeah, they were front row right at the dugout. And now I can't say I remember this, but I've heard the story so many times. I feel like I do. I used to sit on top of the dugout. I am assuming before the game during warm up, but I'd sit cross-legged on top of the dugout, and players would come over and say hi to my dad and me, because I was a little kid. So of course I got some nice attention. And that started me in my love for baseball.
Aww.
Yeah, I think now in the dugout, the A's dugout was the first base dugout, wasn't it? And then the visitors was the third base dugout. But I don't think it had, access to the clubhouse or anything. They came down when the players came down on the field. They came down along the right field stands. I think there was a ramp.
Oh,
yeah, and then they came onto the field that way and maybe walked to the dugout.
I'm amazed that they had no fence up there for us not getting killed by a foul ball or something in the middle of the game. But that was the good old days when I don't think we had seat belts either. So
yeah, you had to pay attention at a baseball game for sure.
Yeah.
So you have memories like I do of kind of the weird things. They weren't a good team. They usually lost about 96 games a year, and it was always a battle between them and the Washington Senators who was going to be in last place. But I always said the closest they ever got to the World Series was their scoreboard. I don't know, you might remember the Hams Beer sign up there, but that scoreboard came from the Braves field, and the Boston Braves were in the 1948 World Series. That's the same scoreboard that was in that World Series. Closest the A's got.
They probably thought it would bring them good luck, but I guess not. I don't remember them being a losing team, and I think that says a lot for my dad for having season tickets for a losing team, kind of like a Cubs fan. Right?
True baseball fans.
Yeah.
You remember the mascot?
Oh, Charlie O, a favorite with children, especially. And I used to go out to Benjamin Stables to rent horses to ride. They were the place to go. And I'm almost positive I saw Charlie O there. I think they stabled him there.
I'm pretty sure you're correct about that.
Yeah.
The Chiefs War Paint horse was stabled there as well.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that's who I saw.
Now, you weren't there the night that Satchel Paige pitched, but longtime A's fans, they know Satchel Paige. He lived in Kansas City, pitched for the Monarchs. Had to be in the middle 50s. In 1965, when he shut down the Boston Red Sox for 3 innings, only gave up 1 hit. to another Hall of Famer, Carl Yastrzemski. Remember this little item?
Oh yeah, the guy that pops up out of the ground, and another favorite of children, obviously.
Harvey the Rabbit. He actually named that rabbit after the movie Harvey the Rabbit with
Oh,
Jimmy Stewart. He saw that movie. That's where he said he got
mhm.
for Harvey.
You have interesting trivia.
Yeah, I like to put
He
that in
does.
my
Trust me.
podcast.
I hear it all the time.
Yeah, some of my older subscribers will probably remember MC Hammer. He was discovered by Finley in Kansas City dancing when he was 10 years old, and Finley actually paid him money to dance from time to time on top of the dugouts.
Which is very impressive. I don't think I was there for those games.
He could
I
spot
might have been
talent.
too old. Huh?
He could spot talent.
Yeah.
And Charlie Finney could spot baseball talent too. Unfortunately, the players he found weren't ready when they played in Kansas City, but they're kind of right on the cusp. Reggie Jackson made his debut as a Kansas City A, and Sal Bando, Joe Rudy, Catfish Hunter. Cat Paneras played a number of years here at the shortstop. 64, I think, is when he started, or 5, somewhere thereabout. Gene Tennis started in Kansas City. So the nucleus of that dynasty started in Kansas City. We just didn't get to enjoy it because they developed after they moved to Oakland. But not so much for the A's. You were also a baseball fan when the Royals came to town, and you still had those good seats and got to see up close and personal baseball players.
Well, I didn't necessarily have good seats. I kind of finagled some good seats at Royals. Well, when I was a little bit older. But everybody was a Royals fan because it seemed, you would know the period of time better than I would. They went to the playoffs almost every year, it seemed, and didn't always make it. The Yankees, I believe, was our nemesis back then, and we wouldn't make it to the World Series, but we did. We finally made it to the World Series. But I always loved baseball. And but I didn't, during my teenage years, it's just not cool to go to the games. So probably had better things to do with those years. But then one of my best friends in Kansas City was also a huge Royals fan. And so we would go to games together. And what was so great is the bleacher seats for I don't know how long, it feels like decades, were always $1.50 because they wanted people to, what's his name, the owner, Kaufman.
Ewing Kaufman.
Yeah. Wanted everybody to be able to afford to come to a ball game, which I always thought was cool. So for a while, we always went in through for a long time, we went in through the $1.50 seats in the outfield, which weren't bad seats. And we get there real early and, get really good seats. And then after I was there a while, I was in my 20s then. Yeah, young 20s, very early 20s. And I guess I accidentally kind of flirted with one of the, what are they called? The
Usherettes?
Usher. The
Usher.
usherettes are the women. So one usher, and he realized we were there most games. And he said, hey, if you want to come over around I think it was 4th or 5th inning, if there's open seats, you can sit there and nobody will kick you out. So he actually escorted me around to right behind the Royals dugout, introduced me to the usherettes there. And I don't think my friend was with me, or she was too scared to go because she didn't like to break rules. And that was kind of breaking a rule, but I figured that was a technical.
If they're escorting you.
Yeah. It's like nobody's coming. Somebody will go sit in those. So I got to know the usherettes really well. So I always, and my girlfriend didn't go to as many games as me. And I kind of got into, once you kind of get addicted, and this was like 79 and 80, and the team was so good. They like won almost all the time. I started going to almost every game. I'm not sure how I worked that with my job, but it seemed to work. And I would just go in through the bleacher seats and wait and then go around. Well, after a while, I got to know the police officers that on their day off, they work the stadium. And the same two would work this one section of the stadium. And at every inning break, they'd move to the next tunnel. And then they go back and things like that. So until the fifth inning, I'd walk with them and we'd talk and we'd watch the game and got to be friends with them. And they said, Sandy, don't bother going in over at the bleacher seats. People are always giving us tickets as they go in and say, we have a couple extra tickets, give them to somebody. So just come in, you can use those tickets to get in the door, then you can still hang out with us and then get the seats at the fifth inning. And almost every game I sat right behind the Royals dugout within the first maybe 5 rows, 6 rows, and sometimes a little bit higher. So then it became family. If you go to all the games and you get to know everybody, I knew everyone. And I'll tell you a fun story. I don't think I mentioned this to you before. I might have. It was my dad's birthday, and maybe, I don't know, his 70th or 65th or something getting up there. And so I asked the season ticket holders if anybody had a game, around that time that I could buy their seats and bring my dad. So get 2 seats. And so I did that. They were not going to be at that game. So we went to Arthur Bryant's and got sandwiches. And then we went to the ball game and we got there nice and early. And I introduced them to the players I had gotten to know just from being there, which I'll tell you about those. Those are kind of fun stories. And my dad just thought he said, this is the best present anyone's ever given me, just to spend the day with you out here, meet players, eat barbecue. This is the best day ever. I never topped that gift. But that was really
top that gift. That's the best gift ever.
Oh yeah. And we talked about old stories of going to ball games and all kinds of fun stuff. So that was special. That was a special day out at Royal Stadium.
That's cool.
Let's talk about how you met Bobby Brett.
So I went to a lot of games. Mm-hmm. Well, that doesn't even have anything to do with it, to be honest.
You were really hot.
You
were gorgeous. You had a gorgeous body, long, beautiful, flowing hair, and you were.
But you're not a groupie.
No, I was not a groupie, and I got very angry a bit. Yes. As a matter of fact, can I interrupt?
I just want to say that before the story. So
yes. I want to tell you a funny little story about that. So I worked at a medical center, and I would listen to the games. I was still in college, so I worked the midnight shift, and so if the kids, I worked on a mental health unit on the adolescent side. So if the kids were gone on a field trip I didn't get to go on, I just you kind of sat around. There were usually 1 or 2 kids that didn't go. And I'd listen to the Royals baseball games on the radio. And I started talking with one of the other therapists. And since I loved baseball, blah, 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 he goes, well, you're just a groupie because I'm female. Yeah, Lori, that's exactly what I did. I wanted to punch him in the face. And I said, I am not a groupie. Don't ever say that again. I probably know more about baseball than you. And he goes, oh, you do not. And he said, can you read a box score? And I went, yeah. And I actually read box scores. So I guess I was a pretty big detail fan. I didn't score games like some people did out there.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, yeah. And he asked me a couple of real easy ones. What's such and such mean? You know how they have the little initials for everything in the newspaper, right? It's always in the newspaper the day after the game. And I told him those. I'm like, duh, that means whatever. And he goes, okay, I have one for you. What's HBP? And I went, hit by pitch. And he went, oh, that's what it means. I have never been able to figure that out. So he used me and never called me a groupie again. So we'll do that. But the way I met Bobby, who is George's next oldest brother from him, he's 2 years older, a friend of mine a family that I was close to lived out at Lake Quivira, where George lived at the time. And it's a gated place. And it's this beautiful 3-mile run. It's not this new fancy gated community. There's houses of all sizes, old trees, older homes that are just wonderful. Probably a few new ones. And they would leave my name at the gate so I could go run there whenever I wanted. And I ran there a couple of times a week.
There was a house there there was a house there at Lake Quivira. I remember it was really unusual, and I kind of pictured it was like a box that was tall. I'm just kind of remembering. I wasn't there a lot, but
people probably did strange things as time went on, and they replaced some of the older homes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But it was a beautiful place. And there's one road. Well, no, there's a little more than one road, but there's this one main road, and it goes all the way around the lake. 3 miles. So I'd go out there and run. So I'm running one day and I pass a guy and we go, hi. And then we come back around and he's walking for cool down. I'm still running. He was faster than me. And he said, hi, do you live out here? And it was Bobby. And he was kind of a flirt back in those days, and probably still a little bit of a flirt, but he's happily married with a grown child. But so I stopped and we started talking. And the Brett brothers, at least Kemmer and Bobby and George, have a lot of similarities. They don't look exactly alike, but look similar. So as we're talking,
I got a picture of Kemmer, and they did.
Yeah, Kemmer and George actually looked a lot alike, I thought. Bobby looks very much like a brother. Their older brother, John, didn't look that much like them. So I'm talking to him, and I thought, I think that's George's brother. I knew George lived out in Lake Quivira, but never saw him. And so I said, what's your last name? And he said, Brett. And I went, oh, you look a lot like George. And he goes, yeah, he's my brother. And he said, do you want to go to the game tonight? Because he was in town he was in town for something, whatever, to see George. And I said, actually, I'm already going with 2 girlfriends. And he goes, oh, okay, well, come over and sit with me for a couple of innings if you want. I'm right behind home plate or wherever the player seats, I think, are all right behind home plate. I said, okay. So I went over and sat with him for a few games, and he was there with one of his best friends who I also got to know from California. He was visiting from LA, and because they grew up in El Segundo. So we went out with my girlfriends, and he said, you want to go out after the game? And they were meeting at the Grand Falloon, which I can't believe is still there on the plaza. I noticed it when I was just there when I saw you guys. What was that, in October?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, God, that restaurant has lasted. But all the players went there after the game, and so we just sat at a table with Bobby and his friend, and George didn't sit there. He's everybody was googling around him. Well, Google means a different word now, goggling around him. But anyway, first of all, Bobby's very easy to be friends with. He's very friendly. He's very unpretentious. He's just a nice guy. We ended up becoming friends forever. And that would have been, I think it was in 1980. So that makes 37 years?
40
something.
43 years ago.
Yeah.
I had that figured out when I saw him last time. He was here for the All-Star game this year. But the way we ended up staying friends is I ended up moving out to LA, where I met Lori. And I was kind of done with Kansas City. Sorry, all you Kansas City folks, but the humidity got tiring, and I found out I'm old enough to leave home. So I moved to LA. And, Bobby was one of the only people besides a few relatives who I stayed with until I found a job in a place that I knew. So I let him know I was in town, and we just became really good friends. We've stayed friends. He's just, it's been really great. And I actually ended up living not too far from him at one point, because I lived in Manhattan Beach.
Right.
And he lived in Hermosa Beach. And I worked for a newspaper in Hermosa Beach. So that's how I also met Kemmer, who is he passed away from brain cancer, one of the nicest humans on the face of the earth.
Oh,
Now, if you don't know who Kemmer is, she's talking about Ken Brett, George's brother, who was also a pitcher in the major leagues, and he was briefly on the Royals in 1980 and 1981. Also, it mostly pitched with the California Angels. But when George first came up, I told you a story when you were here in September. When George came up, it was called up as a rookie in 1974, I think it was. George is ambidextrous, so he goes to the bullpen with a left-hander's glove, and he acts like he's warming up and doing a bullpen session as a pitcher. And so the other players walking on the field said, "Oh, I didn't know we got Ken Brown on our team."
I didn't know that one. That's cute.
That's sort of kind of how George behaves.
I walked up behind him. Bobby was having some small party. I don't know if there was a game on TV. And so he said, "Stop by if you want." So I was out riding my bike and I stopped over. And I thought I saw Kemmer from the back. So I went up and I said, "Hey, Kemmer," and pat him on the back. And George turned around and he goes, "Why does everybody think I'm Kemmer?" I went, "Because you look like a," I said, "From the back, you look identical." And he went, yeah. I think I must have been like
the same way. This picture would have been in 77 or so.
And I think they just were the same body type, similar hair, but so that was kind of funny. But so it was really fun getting to know Kemmer. And when he was announcing for the Angel, well, he was actually announcing for the Royals. For the Seattle Mariners for a year or so. So it might have been when he was announcing for them, but also when he came up with the Angels, he was announcing for the Angels. And so he would get me tickets, this is Kemmer. He would get me tickets, and we had so much fun with him being in the broadcast booth because I was then married, took my 12-year-old stepdaughter and her best friend up to the broadcast booth. And he goes, "Oh, let me interview you." And they went, "Okay." So he did, but he wasn't really on air. But they thought that he was. So, and then I scored big with a boss that was visiting in town from Phoenix, happened to be when the A's were in town. So I took him to a game, went up to the broadcast booth. He met Kemmer, and he was nicer to me after that. So,
the boss.
That's how.
Yeah, so that was really fun.
Tell them who you know.
You got a chance to meet other Royals players, and also eventually we want to get to how this came about.
Yeah, so by the way, in case I don't forget, I didn't even realize that I didn't have Kemmer's autograph on there, and he played for the Royals in the 80s, and I could have gotten his autograph at any time when I lived in LA and didn't think about it. Anyway,
it wasn't the first thing on your mind, which I really appreciate, actually.
You mentioned that Bobby asked you not to bother George about memorabilia, so you kind of put that probably out of your head.
He didn't necessarily say that. I think it became kind of common knowledge that George was getting tired of signing autographs, and I think he still did, but he was very hard to catch. He didn't just meander out, after the games, to go to his car. I remember when I was getting autographs on that, or it might have been on something else. I got Darryl Porter's autograph on my ball glove by waiting for him to come out after the game. They shower and do all their media stuff or whatever. George was impossible to find, and he didn't come over by the fence where I got most of those autographs. So do you want me to tell you about the ball or getting?
You can't. I guess you found a ball and contacted Lori about a year ago.
Yeah, I found it when I was cleaning out my basement for a remodel, and I think it was last time I was visiting there, Lori. I told you about it. We've known about it for a while, Brian. Oh no, I didn't know where it was though. I said if I ever find this ball, I want to give it to Brian, because I found out what a giant baseball geek you are. So then I remodeled my basement and I found it. But yeah, so I wanted to give it to somebody who would appreciate it, because obviously, and by the condition it was in, I hadn't kept it all nice and packed away neatly. I think it was in a box at the bottom of a box. But I had fun getting that. So when I
How did you get it?
So I used to go to all the games, I was telling you guys, and the police officers got me the tickets to get in, and I'd end up hanging out by the on deck circle mostly, watching practice before the game. And the pitchers who weren't pitching that day would always kind of hang out and talk to fans because they weren't having to play. So they were, it was real easy for them just to hang out. They do autographs. And I got to know two of the pitchers because I guess they were maybe the friendliest and hung out the most. And it was Larry Gura and Renee Martin. And so, Larry was one of the best pitchers that the Royals ever had. Don't you agree?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think he won 18 games in 1980.
Yeah. He was hard to beat. He could really strike him out with his slider. And
he was mostly a breaking ball pitcher. He was like a physical fitness freak. He was always in shape. Very good.
Yeah. He was so nice. And then Renee, I just looked this up the other day when I knew I was going to talk to you. I think 1980 was the year he joined the team. I didn't even realize that at the time, but he was super nice. And so he had I can't remember if I asked him if I could have a ball, or he said, "Here, you want a ball?" and just handed it to me before the game. And I said, "Sure." I said, "Will you autograph it?" And he went, "Sure." And as you see, he took up like 25% of the ball, signing it. The best looking guy on the team, I think it said Renee Martin. Yep. From the best looking guy on the team, Renee. So he took that whole section up, which was pretty funny. And then I just had the ball. So I started asking other players that were close by while I was there to sign it. And over the full season, I got a lot of signatures. Obviously, I did not get George's because never saw him in a way that I could ask. And I can't remember. It seems like in my memory somewhere, I asked Bobby if he could help me get George's signature on this. I may have. That feels like it's in my memory, but I don't want to be unfair. And he said, "Please don't ask me favors like that. Everybody asks me those favors." And you know what?
This is a long time ago.
Yeah. This is back in probably 80 when I first met him. And he goes, you work on it. And I was like, okay. So I never, ever asked him again, even though we got to be really good friends. And I would see George, I just thought, whatever. And the ball was probably packed away somewhere anyway. And I wasn't even thinking about it. So when I found out that you were such a baseball geek, I thought, where is that baseball? I bet you would really like it. Plus you're in Kansas City. And you were raised in Kansas City. So I managed to find it. And then Bobby happened to be coming out for the All-Star game this summer, was in Seattle. And so I have a new house since he'd been here before. So he came over to see my new little humble abode. And we had a really nice day together. And toward the end, because I was so afraid he'd say the same thing, almost 40 years later, right?
Yeah.
Or 40 years later.
Right.
It stuck in me that day, obviously. I said, "I've never asked you a favor, have I?" And he went, "No, haven't ever asked me a favor. Why?" And I said, I showed him the ball and I said, "I've never been able to get George's autograph on this." And he looked at the ball and he's like, "Oh, wow. That was pretty cool." And I said, "I'm going to be in Kansas City in October. Would you help me see if George will sign it?" And he went, "Of course." So he did, he contacted George. He just texted him. And then he said, before he did that, he said, "Just text me when you arrive in Kansas City." So I did. I said, "I'm in Kansas City." He goes, "Okay, let me text George." Texted George. George replied back, "Sure, that's fine. Just have her message, give her my phone number and tell her to text me." So I texted him and said, "Hi, this is Sandy, Bobby's friend." And he goes, "Sure, why don't you come over tomorrow at 2:30? And gave me his home address. went by his house the next day, and he loved seeing the ball. I mean, he held that thing and he was going all around. He's going, oh, look, oh, it was so cute. I didn't expect that. It was really
Memory lane. Yeah.
Yeah, those were fabulous years.
Yeah.
And those were some of his very best years, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's the year he hit 390.
Yeah, I was at that game. Were you at that game?
The one where he was over 400
Yeah.
in August, late August.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was not at that game, but you were there. How about that?
I was there, and
Wow.
it was the most memorable because of the way it happened. So the bases were loaded. Well, okay, so there's a whole story even with Clint Hurdle behind this that people may know, because I think I read about the Clint Hurdle part of it in the Kansas City Star. So by the time George could have come up again for bat again, would have been late in the game if the game kept rolling on. So then they were going on the road after that, and he knew this is when he had a chance to go over 400. So they were like, if whoever was batting right in front of him didn't get out, he was going to bat again. So he's back in the tunnel, just kind of psyching himself down and just trying to calm himself. This is how the newspaper described it. And Clint Hurdle, who people that know Kansas City trivia or personalities, was a real jokester. And so he was thinking, I'm going to help George just kind of release some tension here so he can hit. And good job. And so he went back into the tunnel, pulling on his gloves, his batting gloves. And he goes, hey, George, coach wants me to go ahead and hit. You've had 4 at bat. I think he'd had 4, maybe 3, but not 4. and I could use the practice. And George flipped out. And he goes running out. It was George Fry, right? Would have been the coach then?
Yeah.
Jim Fry.
Yeah,
Was the
goes
name.
running out to Fry going, you can't take this away from me. You can't do this. What are you doing? And Fry looked at him like, what are you talking about? You're putting Clint in instead of me. And he goes, I am not. And he turns around and Clint is like hysterically. And he went up, the bases were loaded, hits a double, which was better than a home run because it cleared all the bases and won the game. And he was standing on second base all by himself in the middle of the field.
Oh.
And it
With-
was,
With 400 on the scoreboard behind him.
What's that?
With his batting average, 400 on the scoreboard behind him. raising his
Yes.
arms.
And people would not stop screaming. It went on forever. It just stopped the game for a while. And it was very exciting. That was better than the World Series game I was at that they won.
The last,
It was
the
just
last
so-
game I went to the Royals with my dad was 1977 on Fan Appreciation Day. That was Clint Hurdle's first game. That was his major league debut game. And I remember he hit 2 home runs in that game.
Wow. Yeah, he was a good guy. There were some weird things that got him bad press, and I felt really bad for him. But he was a really nice guy, and was really good to fans. Joked around with him. So, but that was a wonderful experience. That's my favorite game I've ever been at.
So you got George's autograph on the baseball.
Yeah.
But you have before that you had 16, and really mostly the main players on the autographs. Rich Gale, I think he was a young player that year, maybe a rookie. Rich Gale was a starting pitcher, probably the third. Below that we see, let me get the card off. Below that we see Gordy McKenzie. He was a coach. And it took me a while to figure out who this signature under Gordy was, but that is Willie Aikens.
Yeah.
Willie played
We
first
loved
base.
Willie. Yes.
Yeah, played first base, power hitter. He sometimes signs some baseball cards as Willie Mays Aikens, but he only had a little space here, so he just put Willie Aikens on there. I thought I put a picture of him, but maybe I forgot to upload a picture of Willie. Below him is John Wathen. This is John Wathen's signature here. He later became the manager of the Royals. You remember how he was a catcher, he could steal bases?
I don't remember. I remember him being a catcher, but he was a good base stealer, huh?
Yeah, he could steal you about 20 bases. Now on the
Isn't
sweet
that
spot,
unusual for a catcher? Because aren't they usually kind of stocky guys?
yeah, that's unusual.
Yeah.
Now on the sweet spot here is Dave Chalk, who also played with the Angels, third baseman. And then next to him, I had a hard time figuring out who this signature is. This is Pete Lecoq.
Oh.
And I had to see
that one's fading. Sorry, I didn't take better care of it. Although it might be in the pin because some of them.
It's probably in the pin. Yeah. I thought I uploaded Pete Lecoq, but maybe I didn't either. But you could see on his baseball card that it's the same signature.
That's pretty good because, to be honest, I don't even remember him.
Now, above him is Marty Patton.
Mm-hmm.
He was a starter reliever.
Oh, look at that young face. Oh, my.
Yeah, he was one of the Seattle Pilots at one time. Oh. I have another signature of him on a jersey. I saw him and he signed a baseball jersey for me. I was at a game where he was pitching one time and he had a no-hitter going with 2 outs in the 9th inning. It was against the Angels, and Dave Collins bunted for a base hit, which I thought was just the tackiest thing in the world. Just don't bunt for a base hit. Now, above that, I had a hard time figuring out this signature. You see the 2 loops on there.
Oh, yeah.
That is
right above Marty.
Yes. And that is Dennis Leonard.
I can tell by his last name better. That certainly doesn't look like Dennis.
It looks like Jesus, doesn't it? You mentioned
it does. Spelled incorrectly.
But yeah, that's Dennis.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's Dennis Leonard's signature for sure. Now above that, we already put his picture up, but Darryl Porter is above that. Now, do you remember who wrote "Thanks, Slider" on here?
Well, I wonder, Larry Gurrow was known as Slider. That was his nickname. Did he sign it anywhere else? He didn't. That's not exactly an autograph. I would have made him re-sign it had I.
I don't think he signed it. There's Gurrow's signature is not on here. Huh. Now over here is my favorite player, probably as a Royal, and that was Amos Otis.
Oh yeah.
And below here, Clint Hurdle. And I'm glad he did this. He wrote 1980 under there.
Oh, he must have signed it early and dated it for me. Isn't that nice?
Mm-hmm.
I'm really glad he did.
And then we have below him a player who was well known for one of the first players to really grow a big afro in the 70s, Jose Cardinal. Mm-hmm. Probably his best years were with the Cubs, but he was on the 1980 Royals. Below him is Jim Fry, the manager's signature. Yeah. And then
I wonder how often the managers get asked for their autograph. Do they get asked often? I guess depending on who they are.
Yeah, probably not so much. Let's see. And then we got the best looking. I think we did that.
Rainy.
Yeah, we did. We went over all the autographs. What a gift, Sandy. I would sure appreciate.
Oh, you're welcome. I wanted it. I'm so glad that it's with somebody who really appreciates it because I didn't display it. It was really fun getting it signed. I should have been a little more diligent in getting everybody. It was just probably kind of, when I saw them, I'd ask them. So
you got most of them. Only missing is Frank White, Hal McRae, Gurris, Splittorff, and Quisenberry. The only main Royals that are missing. So you got most of them.
Yeah.
And it was so sweet of you to think of Brian and just to try to get George's autograph for Brian, which is like just so sweet of you.
which was fun. I have to admit that ended up being a real nice experience.
And sweet of George
he was
to
so nice.
to sign it years later.
Yeah.
He is a good guy. We were talking to a guy here at the condo. His name is Robert. And Robert, we were talking about George Brett. He said that he was on a crew one time. He was going to have a party at his home. So him and his crew set up tents in his yard for the party. And George came out and gave everybody $100 tip for helping set up tents. Yeah.
Well, that was nice. I have a wonderful, sweet George Brett story, which never made it to the papers. I had two friends that, I had one friend that lived in, where'd I run where I met Bobby?
Lake Quivira.
Lake Quivira. But right outside the gate is a gas station that was there for a very long time. And a very good friend of mine, a very dear older man, owned that. And George was always so kind to him. Everybody coming and going would pump the gas there. And that was way before self-serve, which I don't think Emmett would have, his name was Emmett, would ever have let anybody self-serve anyway. But so he kind of got to know George just from him coming and going. And they chat a little bit while he was filling the tank. And so one day he had mentioned to George once that his dad lived in, I think, central Kansas somewhere in a small town, and was getting a lot older and, was kind of, aging out a little bit. So one day George just asked him, he said, "Hey, how's your dad doing?" He goes, "He's okay. He's really getting older, starting to have some issues, and, not very mobile anymore." Whatever he told him, not exactly sure what. And George said, "We have a break coming up. Would it have been I don't remember." And he goes, "Do you want me to go out with you and visit?" And he said, "Well, yeah, but I mean, it's like a 3-hour drive one way, or however long it was. It was not a short drive. Could have been 2 hours." And he said, "Great, let's do it." So he rode all that way out with Emmett. Emmett, I remember telling me, because Emmett's the one who told me the story. It never made it to the papers. Told me that George slept the entire way out there in the car. And then they got there, and the whole family, that lived in the area, which I think were quite a few cousins and things, all came to the house because they knew George Brett was coming. And he was nice to everybody, signed autographs, they had food, and he hung out for, a couple of hours with them, and then drove all the way back. And he just did that without anybody ever knowing or finding out. So, as hard as George can be to get an autograph, he has a big heart. And also, the day I got his autograph on there, right before I came over to your place, I explained, how I'd never been able to find him to get his autograph. He said, "Yeah, I can be a little hard to get an autograph from." I said, "Yes, you can." So,
don't you have a story of when you were you were a waitress and he was in the?
Oh yes, as a matter of fact, and I should have. And even thinking back on this, I should have never done it. But this guy. So after I moved out to LA, I worked at this very popular, kind of cool Mexican restaurant called Tequila Willie's in Manhattan Beach. And Bobby lived in Hermosa, and then the other side of Manhattan Beach is El Segundo. So that's where they all hung out. And so he came in for dinner with a couple of people. He wasn't with Bobby. I don't know if I knew anyone else he was with, but I was waiting on their table. And so I'm just waiting on their table, normal. I didn't want to bug him. I may have possibly said, "Oh, Bobby's a friend of mine." Can't remember. But one of my other tables said, "Is that George Brett?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Please get me his autograph." And I went, "No, you know what? I don't even have his autograph. No, I'm not going to do that to him." And he goes, "Please, please." And I think he found a napkin, which is really stupid to get an autograph on a napkin. But anyway, and he said, I will tip you really well if you just ask him. And I said, what if I don't get it? And he goes, I'll tip you anyway. And so I said, let me think about it. So I'm over there, cleaning up their plates at George's table or something. And I said, George, I have something to ask, but you can 100% say no. And I told him this guy at the other table wanted his autograph. I said he'd give me a big tip, but who knows if he would anyway. And I didn't even want to bug you, but I don't know. I just say no. And he goes, no. You know what? And he took it from me and he did his autograph and he said, you tell him he better give you a gigantic tip. You have to say that. And I went, okay. So I gave the guy the autograph and I'm pretty sure he left me a really big tip. So I thought that was nice.
So he gave you, when you went over to get the baseball signed, he gave you some baseball cards that were signed as well.
Yeah, well, you got those baseball cards another way. How did you get those baseball cards, Sandy? You got them from a neighbor, right? My neighbor
out here is also a big baseball fan and always collected cards over his childhood and adulthood. And he was just going through them one day and saw all these George Brett ones. And he knew I knew Bobby and, loved Royals baseball. So he gave them to me. He goes, I'm probably never going to do anything with these. Would you like them? And I said, oh, sure. Why not? I mean, I wasn't a baseball card collector. And I forgot about this, Brian. I gave one to my grandson. And I think I actually mentioned this to you guys when I was there, but he never ended up really being a baseball card collector. So I just assumed it was, now he's like in his mid-20s. I just figured it was packed away somewhere. So I saw him a week or so ago. We went to dinner. Oh. And I told him about meeting George, and getting his autograph. And he said, Nana, I still have the card you gave me that was in a nice little, plexiglass thing. I even bought him one of those, Brian. Aren't you proud of me?
Nice. Yeah.
Those I just had, in an envelope. And I said, oh, I could have taken that with me. I completely figured you didn't have it. He goes, no, I've kept that. So next time.
There is one other card, right?
That you kept.
Oh, you're right. You're right. I can switch that out.
You can switch that, or I could send you one of these back to replace that if you want to give that to him.
My guess is I figured out which one was best and gave it to him. Because, he's my grandson. And that was before I knew I was going to give you the rest of these. Yeah, no, I might put that in a little thingy and give that to him as well.
Yeah.
I'll let him keep the other one. I don't have to trade it.
Sandy,
Bobby wanted me to keep one for myself.
Well, we could send you one back, though, so that if Bobby ever says anything, you can say.
Yeah, true. Yes, I have it right here. Well, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun, Sandy. Thank you for coming on with us.
Well, this has been fun. I've never been on a podcast, and I like one where I don't have to think. It's just what's part of my life. So.
Most of my podcasts are non-thinking.
And I could sit in this room and listen to these two talk about baseball for about 3 more hours. So we might not want to do that long, but
you're so cute. Did I tell all my stories I wanted to? I hope.
Actually, you used to see some of those players like Larry Gura and Rennie Martin on the road when they came to Los Angeles.
Well, that was kind of fun. And Larry Gura kind of made me laugh. When they're traveling on the road, they're just with the team. I found out that ball players in general watch soap operas, which I thought, I can't even stand soap opera. Never. I tried watching one once and I thought, well, this is the most depressing thing I've ever seen. But, they're hanging out. I mean, what do you do, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so since I knew Larry and Rennie Martin, one of them would always leave me tickets for the game. I must have had a way to connect with them, right? Or I'd call the hotel room. They said, because when they knew I was moving, I don't remember how that all
happened. I'll tell you what, I remember getting phone calls at our place from Bobby asking if you want to go to the Angels when the
really?
I remember that.
Did I go with him? Maybe that's how then I ended up connecting with Larry or Rini to get tickets for when Bobby wasn't around. Oh, oh, good. It's always good to have a roommate that remembers more. Yeah. So Larry loved pizza and Pac-Man. And anyway, we would go out for pizza afterwards, and he always brought along a rookie for me because he thought I was so young. Well, I was young, but now that I look at his age, I wasn't that much younger than him. But the rookies probably didn't know anybody, so that kind of shows how sweet Larry is. That he'd say, "Come on, let's go out." We're meeting Sandy. Or I'd actually just pick him up after the game, and we'd go somewhere. And then Rini, kind of the same way. We just go out for lunch somewhere or dinner if it was a day game, just because they don't have anything, like planned. And I would assume sometimes it gets a little boring. So that was kind of fun. So I got to know those guys in a different way. Plus, I worked with a guy at Tequila Willie's, my restaurant, the restaurant, not mine. And he was from ASU. And that's where Larry Gura came up through college playing baseball. And when I mentioned to him that I got tickets for the game from, this pitcher, Larry Gura, because we were talking about baseball, he went, What? Larry Gura? And so they always left me 2 tickets, but, I always found someone to go. So I took him, and oh my goodness, he was like so happy. And so I took him to a couple of games. And that's when, I don't know if Larry loved Pac-Man or pizza, but that's where we went. And Larry and my friend just sat playing Pac-Man for like an hour.
You just made his day.
And when we left, he goes, "I can't believe I've been playing Pac-Man with Larry Gura." So that was really sweet. And then,
Well, you knew Larry Gura when he was in his prime. In 1980, he was 18-10, 2.95 ERA, and he was an all-star in 1980.
Yeah.
Pitcher of the year 2 times for the Royals.
He was. I remember he is the pitcher. I remember being the best pitcher for the Royals. Or on the Royals. There were probably some others. And Dan Quisenberry was a killer relief pitcher. I don't think anybody ever got past him. And I can't remember what the music was when Quisenberry came out, but it was something really fun because
he was you might not have known him, but he was quite a character too.
I didn't know him at all. Did I even get his signature on the ball?
No, that's one of the 4 that are missing. But let's see, Rennie Martin had his best year in 1981 when he had a 2.77 earned run average in 29 games.
He was a bit of a wild pitcher.
Yeah, but, he had a little bit of control problem, but I mean, he was very effective. He had a 12-6 overhand curveball that was really hard.
Yeah, and that would have been the year 80 and 81 were the years.
Yeah,
I think that I was there all the time and got to know those guys. And then I moved out to LA in 81 and met Lori.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did, and I'm sure glad you thought of me, and really appreciate this gift.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad I had you to give it to, because somebody should have that loves it, and I can't imagine anyone better than you. So that makes me very happy.
Well, it makes him very happy too. He may not say it, but
he's said it 2 or 3 times. Yeah. Well, and then you told me in a text that he was very happy.
Yeah, you hit a home run with this baseball for sure.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm so happy that I got to pass that along to you.
And thank you for doing this interview and sharing with my subscribers and my community with our love for baseball and Kansas City baseball, and some inside stories on the Royals players themselves, many of whom you knew personally.
Yeah, this has been very fun. I thought this was great, and I don't know how many women you have on that,
You're the first.
Podcast, so.
You're the first on the podcast. I do have some women who are subscribers, not very many.
Good.
But I do have some.
Good. Good. Well, this has been very fun, and I love you guys, and glad to do this. So glad to see you last month. So
glad to see you again too.
Friend. Such a great thing in life to have friends that you can just trust and love. So
Yep, forever. Yeah.
And next time you see Bobby Brett, tell him I say thank you too.
I will.
Yeah, because
I
he'll
will
probably
do
wonder what happened to the baseball. Yeah.
Yeah. And he did mention to me, don't tell George you're getting it signed and then you're giving it away. And I went, okay, I understand that, because it's like, what, you don't want it? But I think he'd rather you have it if he knew who you were. So, and I did keep a card. So anyway, it was fun meeting him too. Well, thanks. This has been great.
All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.